What if your entire nation was marked for death? Not by war, not by invasion, but by a single signature. A law sealed by a king that could not be undone. Men, women, children, all condemned. And in the center of it all, one woman. A queen with a secret. A choice to make between silence and sacrifice. This is the story of Esther. The story begins in one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen, the Persian Empire, stretching from India to Ethiopia, a kingdom of immense power, wealth, and absolute authority. At its center sat the king, Xerxes I, known in the Bible as Ahasuerus, a ruler of unmatched influence. His word was law, his command irreversible, and in his palace everything glittered with excess. Gold-lined halls, marble pillars, endless feasts that lasted for days. Power lived here, and power could destroy. During one of the king's grand banquets, wine flowed freely, judgment faded, and in a moment of pride, the king made a command. He called for his queen, Queen Vashti. He wanted to display her beauty, as if she were a trophy. But she refused. A single act of defiance that shook the palace. The king was furious, not just because she disobeyed, but because her refusal threatened the order of the entire empire. If one woman could defy the king, what would stop others? So, the decision was made. Vashti was banished, erased from the throne. And just like that, the empire had no queen. The king's advisors had a solution, a search. Across the empire, the most beautiful young women would be gathered, brought into the palace, prepared, transformed, and one of them would become queen. Among them was a young Jewish girl, an orphan, quiet, unknown, invisible to power. Her name was Esther. Esther, raised by her cousin, Mordecai, a man of wisdom and quiet faith. Before she entered the palace, he gave her one instruction: do not reveal who you are, hide your identity, hide your people, hide the truth. And so, Esther entered a world of luxury, with a secret buried deep inside her. Days turned into months. The women were prepared, perfumed, presented before the king. And then, it was Esther's turn. She walked into the throne room, not with arrogance, but with grace. And something about her captured the king's attention. Out of all the women, he chose her. Esther became queen. A Jewish girl, now sitting on the most powerful throne in the world. But no one knew the truth. Her identity remained hidden. In the king's court, another man was rising, a man driven not by duty, but by pride. His name was Haman, second in command, given authority over all officials, and with power came arrogance. The king ordered that everyone bow before Haman, and everyone did, except one man, Mordecai. He refused, not out of rebellion, but conviction. He would not bow. Haman noticed, and his pride turned to rage. But his anger didn't stop at one man. When he discovered that Mordecai was a Jew, his hatred grew deeper. This was no longer personal. This became something far more dangerous. Haman wanted revenge, not just on Mordecai, but on his entire people, an entire nation. Haman approached the king, careful, calculated, manipulating words like weapons. There is a certain people, scattered across your empire. Their laws are different. They do not obey the king's laws. It is not in your interest to tolerate them. He never said their name. He didn't need to. He offered money, 10,000 talents of silver, in exchange for one thing: permission. Permission to destroy them. And the king, without fully understanding, agreed. He removed his signet ring and handed it to Haman. With that ring, Haman had the power of the king. A decree was written, sealed, and sent across the empire. Every province, every city. On a single day, the order would be carried out: to kill, to destroy, to annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children. No mercy, no escape. and because it bore the king's seal, it could not be reversed. A nation was sentenced to death. When Mordecai learned of the decree, he tore his clothes and mourned openly. The city fell into chaos, fear spread like fire, and word reached Esther. But she didn't yet know the full truth. So Mordecai sent her a message. He told her everything. And then he asked her to do the unthinkable. Go to the king, plead for your people. But there was a problem. No one could approach the king without being summoned. To do so was punishable by death. Even the queen was not exempt. Esther hesitated. She hadn't been called to the king for 30 days. If she walked into that throne room uninvited, she could die. Mordecai's reply changed everything. Do not think that because you are in the palace, you will escape. If you remain silent at this time, relief will come from elsewhere. But you and your family will perish. And who knows, perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this. Those words cut through fear. This was not coincidence. This was purpose. Esther made her choice. Gather all the Jews. Fast for me. For 3 days. I will go to the king, even if it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. No more hiding. No more silence. The queen was ready to risk everything. On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in royal robes and walked toward the throne room. Every step, a risk. Every breath, uncertain. The doors opened. The king looked up. Silence. And then he extended his golden scepter. She lived. Instead of pleading immediately, Esther did something unexpected. She invited the king and Haman to a banquet, a private feast. The king agreed. Haman was honored. He had no idea what was coming. That night, Haman was filled with pride, invited by the queen herself, elevated above all others. But then, he saw Mordecai again, still refusing to bow, and his anger returned. This time, he made a decision. He would not wait. He ordered a gallows to be built, 50 cubits high, and planned to have Mordecai executed the very next morning. But that night, something changed everything. The king could not sleep, so he ordered the royal records to be read, and there he discovered something he had forgotten. Mordecai had once saved his life. He had exposed a plot against the king, but had never been rewarded. The next morning, Haman entered the court, ready to request Mordecai's execution. But before he could speak, the king asked him, "What should be done for the man?" The king delights to honor. Haman assumed it was about him. So he described a grand honor, royal robes, a royal horse, a public parade. And then the king said, "Do this for Mordecai." In that moment, everything shifted. The man Haman hated was now honored publicly, and Haman was forced to lead the parade. Humiliation, the beginning of his fall. That evening, Esther hosted her second banquet. The king once again asked, "What is your request?" This time, she spoke. "My people have been sold, to be destroyed. If we had only been made slaves, I would have remained silent. But this is destruction." The king was shocked. Who would dare do such a thing? And Esther said, "The adversary and enemy. Is this wicked Haman?" Silence filled the room. The king's anger erupted. Haman panicked. He begged for his life, but it was too late. The king ordered that Haman be executed. On the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. The hunter became the victim. The threat was not over. The decree still stood. It could not be undone. But Esther and Mordecai were given authority. A new decree was written, allowing the Jews to defend themselves. And when the day came, instead of destruction, there was victory. The people survived. The nation lived. What began as a plot to erase a people became a story of survival. One woman who refused to stay silent. This is the story of Esther. What part of this story inspired you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy powerful Bible stories like this, subscribe for more stories that bring scripture to life.